it's time to talk about Contractor Coalition Summit. At the beginning of May, we are going to be in Denver, Colorado for our first Contractor Coalition meetup. We're going to do a standalone event in the middle of September in Minneapolis. It's a one-day crash course, a much less reduced fee. Tickets are available now if you want. That goal here is it's a significant investment to spend 3-4 days away from your business and your family, plus just the expense of attending the conference. We wanted to create an event that was just a one-day crash course. You can find all those details at contractorcoalitionsummit.com. We also in November have our 3-day tail end of the year, which is going to be in Charlotte, South Carolina. So if you're interested in any of those 4 events, please head to contractorcoalitionsummit.com, DM me for any information, or email me, mark@mdwilliamshomes.com. And thanks for tuning in.
At this point, like, it was 10 grand to replace the piece of glass. My glass guy's, he's like, you shouldn't pay for it. I'm like, explain to me how I'm going to get my client to pay for this. Walk me through. Because like, they're looking at me, they just moved in and this glass exploded on them when they're sitting at the kitchen table. I'm lucky that they don't sue me because of all the issues that we've dealt with on this project.
Welcome to Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I've got the OG from the Modern Craftsman, NS Builders. You know him as Yo Daddy. Nick Schiffer from Boston, Mass. What was that line you had on our last social media thing that went really well? Was it like, how did
Yeah,
it go?
Daddy?
Yeah, Daddy. That was so
Yeah,
funny.
Daddy. Yeah, apparently like people were like, oh, Nick, don't do this. Like you're too respected to have this kind of humor. I was like, who dubbed me the not funny guy?
I actually thought it was really funny because you do come off as a bit serious. So you know what, haters, you got to watch out. I mean, just because he wears nothing but black all the time, eat your heart out, Johnny Cash. Nick Schiffer's in town. So this will be our losers or winners, because I gave you an option between Inside the Winds, which is a new series we're starting, or loser or winners, and your direct line to me was, everyone loves failure.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, buddy, we're only a couple weeks away from Contractor Coalition in Denver.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm stoked. I haven't been to Denver, and I know I'm probably the quietest one in your group chat, and you're definitely the loudest, but I've been quietly brewing something up to bring a little bit of heat to the next summit.
Oh, really? You're going to do a surprise, like a different presentation, or what do you mean by that?
Just a stronger presentation.
Okay.
I want people to be like, holy like this. Can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
No,
I just don't want to make your mom mad.
Nah, Mom will be okay. She'll wash your mouth out with a bar of Irish Springs later.
Irish Spring. That's my favorite flavor. But I want people to be like, holy shit, like this is good. So I've been fine tuning our presentations that we've been doing for the last X amount of years to be more condensed and actionable.
I think you and Tyler have such a great way of thinking about that. I think what I've really come to appreciate about our group is how each one of the 5 personalities is so different, and yet somehow we all sort of complement each other. It'd be fascinating to take a personality test for all of us.
Let's do it.
I think it would be really helpful, but I think we already know, like, we very much represent the full color wheel.
Let's do it. I'm curious. Send it to me. I'll do it today. I'll do it right now.
All right while we're doing a live personality test. Actually, the one I want to do is way more in depth than that. But I'll make a note to our group so that we can all get the results before we go. You know, this wasn't meant to be a plug for Contractor Coalition, but why not? You know, this is its 4th year. It was 4 years ago that I met you for the first time. My wife, I didn't even know who Nick Schiffer was, or Brad Levitt, or Morgan Mulliner. She's in my own state. And I told this story recently, but basically my wife was like, hey, you got to go to Nashville. And my life has forever been ruined ever since. I mean, leveled up since that day. And one thing that I've noticed as being a 4-time attendee, and now this will be my 2nd or 3rd one in leadership position, if you will, is how the content continues to evolve. And a different person asked me the other day, why is that? And I said, well, our businesses keep changing. Like when I first met Brad, he had 19 employees. He went all the way up to 31. He's back to like 26. And, you know, think of how much your business has changed even the last 2 years with specifically 45 White Oak. But all of us, none of us are stagnant. We're so dynamic in how we change. And so I love it when alumni come back and see how much we've changed, because we do.
Yeah. No, I think that is the That is the cool part of doing it so often, is that you're essentially like, we're essentially teaching as we learn. Is that the right? Yeah, teaching
Yeah.
as we learn, which is what the podcast has always been. And, and obviously the Modern Craftsman has evolved, and we've put together like, stuff that builders can use and like build their business. But the holy grail is, you come to Contractor Coalition, we're in the room together, and it's just 3 days of just like real actionable stuff. And truthfully, like, it's being in the room. I mean, people ask all the time, like, what's the biggest value people get out of it? It's like, honestly, even for me, it's like, it's just being in the room with 30 people that are all like-minded, that want to just do cool and build cool and work with great people, and, and challenge one another.
Well, I
And I
think
think that is ultimately what I think the biggest value that comes out of these summits is.
I mean, it's business boot camp for your heart, mind, and soul. I always think of it like the inspiration. You can't live on inspiration because some of it has to come from within. But like, it certainly helps
Mhm.
to, there's a verse in Proverbs, "Iron sharpeneth iron," and like when you talk to other people, I mean, it's what gave birth to the Cures Collectives, which is I wanted what we did at Contractor Coalition in local micro markets, where you could have that, that table of 9 people, and you could just say, hey, this is how I do business. How do you do business? Oh, how do you do contracts? Because the stories, I always find, I mean, I've built whole brands. I mean, Misa Hus, I mean, what you've done at 45 White Oak. I mean, I love storytelling. And I
Mhm.
think one of the reasons why I love a podcast, or even this one, is people sharing their experiences in a story format. And I think you and Nick, you are Nick, you and Brad particularly are amazing at teaching through storytelling, because
Mhm.
you're using real life examples. And I think that's why it's so successful. And that is why it resonates with people. And Tyler does a phenomenal job of, the education and really thinking about, I think you both do a better job of thinking about the person that's receiving the information, which I think is why you guys are such great teachers, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't like necessarily consider myself a teacher, where most of my communication or content, it's really just me explaining something. And maybe like that's okay. Well, you're arguably like that is what a teacher does, but your comment about that we do a good job communicating in a way that is received well, I think that's just a product of reps.
Yeah.
And like content specifically, where it's like I watch, what resonates, and then I go back and do it again, and then refine in the way I tell that story. It's like, hey, that's cool, but like I didn't understand this. I'm like, oh, that's a good point. I actually skipped over that detail. Let me do it again.
I think that's what makes you. I think Morgan is good at that. Tyler's good at that. I think, and I shouldn't speak for Brad, but I know for myself, like I'm a dog at a dog park. Like I'm just chasing balls. It makes me
Sure.
really good as a cheerleader, and I think not as good as a coach. And I think Morgan designated me, rightly so, as the hype man. And that's fine. I'm happy to be that. It's very easy for me to do. I think that's why when we do all those mini interviews, I remember when Doug was like, "Thank goodness Mark is doing all that." He's like, I think that one time we did like 40 interviews in like, I mean, it was, Doug was like, I think Doug was exhausted for me, and so, somehow I just kept getting more and more revved. I mean, by the end, I think I started just repeating myself, and
Yeah.
Doug was like, "Mark, you gotta." I think we need to do less is more with you, and we need to go a little deeper on these questions, because I was just turning into like a print press.
Hmm.
Let's get into what this episode is supposed to be about: losers.
Yeah.
And you're one of the biggest losers I know. What? Give me a story. What have you got for the audience as you look back on your career? What are some? And you could do one or two of them, really. But
I know.
just
I've been thinking about a lot, and man, I've been sitting here still contemplating which one I want to share, because there's some I've shared publicly, and there's obviously plenty I have not. But I'm gonna share two that I have not shared publicly, and one is probably a smaller one. So we'll start with that one, and then we'll get to the juicier one. But had a client come to us, and I ignored a ton of the red flags, like right off the bat. But seemingly good interior designer, and I actually have no qualms against her even to this day. Really affluent address in a neighborhood that we really wanted to be part of. Client looked them up, affluent, prominent figure. Like, man, this would be a really good project to get involved with. But the crux of it is the house was 97% complete, and we were asked to come in and investigate some of the issues that they were having. And long story short, the building was never intended to be what they basically, it was never intended to be a single family, and it was converted into one. And they were dealing with a ton of issues from the previous contractor, and ultimately like let go of that contractor. Now, mind you, in considering this project, I had specifically stated like, hey, is there a lawsuit pending? Like, are you going after legal action? No, 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 we're not. Okay, I just want to be very clear. Like, I don't want to get involved if there's like legal. I'm happy to come in and help through this last 3%. It sounds like we'll do the 3%, and there's going to be another whole like phase two of all this.
Let me stop you there for a second. 3% seems like kind of a crazy thing to get involved with. Only 3%. Like, what kind of dollar amount are we talking here?
$1 million.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Never mind. That changes things. I was like, okay. All right. I get it. Got it.
And then there was all this other scope, like 3% meaning to complete, but we ended up having what we deemed was like we were probably going to go backwards 10 to 20% because of the stuff that just wasn't installed appropriately, failing, like pretty big issues, like really big issues. And so we started trying to develop a plan, and then the client's expectations were becoming increasingly more like detailed. Like, hey, we want a detailed report. Like, we want your electrician to come in and take apart every single device and write up a report. So like, open the outlet and say outlet number 47 was not wired correctly. And we were like, what? No, like we're not doing that. And then it just kept, we kept trying to make progress, and then getting these like pretty insane expectation asks, and come to find out they were going to be going after the previous contractor legally. And we had invested all of this time. Like, there was during this time they had communicated like, hey, we want to do all this additional work. Like, we were pricing all these different projects out, like, hey, let's do this immediately, let's put a price to this. And we were just like grabbing on and trying to make this work. And ultimately, my team was like, Nick, like, this is turning into a nightmare. We have not done any of the work. Like, we've only been retained for pre-construction at this point. I think we need to walk away and call it what it is. And I was like, I feel like this could be good. Like, I feel like, and I'm always like that. Like, I'm like, we can work through this. Like, it's going to be fine.
You eat hard for breakfast.
Yeah. And I was like, what's the big deal? And so ultimately, I, at that point in my career, like, I really lean on my team, and if they don't feel it's a good fit, I trust them, because ultimately they're the ones that need to do it. And I wrote this very clear like email stating that we were going to be parting ways, because they were in breach of contract, because it was like clearly stated that we were not getting involved in legal, and we were asking to do things that were well beyond our scope. And they were like, we want to hop on a call. And I'm like, oh shit. And they were like actually really nice about it. And they're like, hey, sorry to hear this. Like, I thought we were aligned. Like, can you just, kind of elaborate on why you're not a good fit? And we did. And they're like, okay, we appreciate you being honest. And I was like, hey, and we're just going to refund like the retainer. Like, there's no reason for us to keep it. We exhausted very little of it and gave them their money back. So, that's not a biggest loser situation, but it was one that, from a legal perspective, if we did not handle that appropriately, we could have been in breach of contract on our side, where we didn't have the right to cancel our contract for the sake of convenience.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors. I've used Pella for 21 years as the exclusive window company on every one of my builds. When people ask me who I trust for windows and doors, it's Pella, every time. Their craftsmanship, their innovation, the top-tier service make them a no-brainer for any custom home builder or designer who demand the best. Whether you're designing something bold or building something with timeless elegance, Pella has you covered. They're also the only window company that has a lifetime warranty on all of their windows. I've gotten to know all of their people at Pella Corporate, as well as locally here at Pella Northland. I'm proud to call them our partners and our friends. Visit Pella.com to learn more and connect with your local reps today. For more information, you can also listen to episode 1, where I interview the Pella Northland founders, as well as episode 109, where we talk all about their latest innovation with the Steady Set window.
Speaking of expectations, years ago, I was approached by a younger couple to renovate their home, and there was no architect involved, and they wanted to do like pretty insane tolerance build. Um, I mean, like really insane tolerances, like just perfectly flat walls. Like at one point, they talked about wanting to have the whole house spray finished, so they could get like almost a vehicle level paint surface. And I'm like, no problem, let's do it. And I'm just going after it. And so I end up like convincing them enough to hire an architect to basically finalize a permit set of drawings, which for this detail, like it was very contemporary, very modern, just wasn't enough. So we essentially designed, built things in place the whole project. And what could have been built in a year ended up taking 3+ years. And a large part of that was just expectation and failure on hiring the right trades. And some of these trades came in and they did a really great job, but it was like insanely slow. Like it was just like a snail pace slowness that was delivering such a high level of of quality that they had far surpassed what the client would have ever noticed. Meaning, like, if they had done 70% of what they ended up doing, the client would not have been able to tell the difference. And it was just that way through and through that project because they had these insane expectations. And I kept trying to plug in and find the right people to deliver this, insane tolerance. And it just was never planned. We did no pre-construction. We were literally figuring it out day in, day out. And somehow I got this client to just trust me. And they'd yell at me and scream at me, and I'd remain calm. And I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I promised I would. I promised I would. And, I just stuck through it. And we faced every single challenge on that project. We had failures in product, failures in waterproof plaster, to like a really like 18 months of trying to figure it out, demoing the whole bathroom, like down to the studs and doing it again. And then in doing that, like damaging in the process. And this job was just like, it felt like it was cursed. And the client would always say that this project is cursed. This project is cursed. And like I'm going to rattle off a handful of other examples, but the project is in Boston. We had to shut down a major street, crane the stone up through the window and get the counters in. And so have all the permits, get the counters. Looking backwards, we get the shop drawings. They have an alternate stone. They look at the alternate stone. They like it. Then they end up saying, hey, we can actually get the original stone. Do you want that instead? Yes, we want that instead. So we get the shop drawings. We approve the shop drawings. Stone gets installed. It looks beautiful. Client stops by at night, says, hey, it looks great, but it's the wrong stone. And
that's after you shut down the street and craned it through the window.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm like, how? Like, the alternate stone was very close. Like it was very similar, but they ultimately wanted the original spec. So I get on site and I'm like, dude, and I call the stone fabricator. I'm like, his name's John. John, dude, this is the wrong stone. And I'm like, we said that they wanted whatever the stone was. And he's like, yeah, but on the shops, it says this stone. I'm like, I know, but we agreed on like the material. Here's the agreement. And then you sent me the shops and I'm approving these for dimensions. He goes, no, that's dimension and material. I'm like, okay, like fair enough. I approved it. I'm wrong. Get me a price to replace it with the right stone. And like, hopefully you can help me out here. And I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I'll try to, if I do remember correctly, I think the original piece that we had to replace was about $14,000. So I had him price it to replace it, and he sent me a proposal for 28 grand. I said, what is this? He goes, material pricing went way up on this stuff. I'm like, you're double what you just charged me to install the wrong stone. And he's like, I know, it's just like, it's crazy. I'm like, I feel like you're me. So I called another fabricator and I I had them price it. I explained the situation. He goes, dude, I can do that for 13 grand. I'm like, okay. So I called the other stone guy. I'm like, just to be very clear, like, here's your 14 grand for the stone that's wrong on the job site. We'll never do business again. Don't ever call me. Like, as I'm just not going to fight it. Like, I probably should have, but I wasn't going to. So
what did he say?
Okay.
Did you ever find out why he tried to do that?
No. He just had, that was, truthfully, that was actually the third project, like the third strike with him. And they were like, they were small, like they basically worked their way up to this big $14,000 loss. So this is a project that is just like cursed. Like, we're dealing with like issue after issue. In that same realm, I end up craning up a 14-foot long piece of white oak for the 14-foot stair tread that was in the living room. And my guys installed it and covered everything up. And I think we're like in punch list, or we're starting to clean, and we pull the floor protection and there's a seam in the middle of the staircase. And I'm like, what's this? And they're like, dude, we cut it wrong when you ship the 14-foot piece. So it's like 2 7s right now. I'm like, and you just installed it and decided not to tell me about it? They're like, we were hoping that you would you wouldn't see the seam. I'm like, do you understand how much more expensive it is now to deal with this than if you had just told me at the time? Like, we could have got that material up in another crane or something, and we ripped it out. And I had to crane another piece of white oak just for that one friggin' step. And I'm trying, like, they move in and I get a text message from them saying the glass railing exploded. So I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but I've had tempered glass explode on me.
I have not. I've heard of it before, but not.
I had a shower glass door explode, and then their railing exploded. And their railing was tempered and laminated. So thankfully it didn't just like disappear. One side shattered and the lamination held it together.
Does it usually have to have an impact, or it's like self-explosion, or like what leads to
no,
that?
It just like, allegedly that was self-explosion. I know it happens, but there was no one can prove it. My glass guy's like, too bad, it's out of warranty. Like, so I'm stuck with this.
Dude, I'm believing your client is right. This job is cursed.
Yeah. At this point, like, it was 10 grand to replace the piece of glass. Like, they were like, my glass guy's, he's like, you shouldn't pay for it. I'm like, explain to me how I'm going to get my client to pay for this. Walk me through it. Because like, they're looking at me, they just moved in and this glass exploded on them when they're sitting at the kitchen table. Not going to happen. Like, at this point, like, I'm lucky that they don't sue me because like of all the issues that we've dealt with on this project. The crux of it is like, this was a takeover project and they had a friend, and I priced it when it was like me and one guy. And like, over the course of the 3 years it took, which was like unreasonable amount of time, more than a year of that was attributed to one trade because of how slow they moved. But it was like, I didn't make any money. I inherited all these trades that I tried to work with that I ended up having to fire and then undo all their work and then redo all their work and then bring in other trades. And it was just an absolute disaster. And we have a fine relationship. The client was like, at the end of the day, like, was happy. Their life changed dramatically in 3 years. And at the end of the day, they got what they were looking for. But it was just a really frustrating process. And truthfully, that project was one of the projects that I went through and was like, I need to figure out how to set up these projects for success. And that's what really drove me into this like maniacal focus on building pre-construction process and like understanding how to actually execute at a higher level. And to think like, that project to the project that we started just shortly after that, I mean, it was literally night and day. It was like first job to job 100. So yeah, I mean, I have plenty of losses, but I think that those two, I think about those two a lot.
What's interesting, and I we don't have enough time on this podcast to do it, and I think in the future I used to always do that on these Thursday episodes. It would just interview for 20-25 minutes and call it a day. I think going forward I'm going to do both the positive and the negative on the same interview, and then I'll split them for the Thursday. But the reason I want to do that is I think it's easier to recall our failures, and it's easier to recall in detail the things that went wrong. Do you think that's true? Than it is easier to, like, if I was to, I'm not saying we don't have great jobs and good positives, we do, we learn so much more from the losses.
We do learn so much more from the losses, but I can share a loss that leads into a win if you want to wrap up on that note.
Yeah, let's do it. To be fair, that's the whole point. I think all of them lead to a win, because if you're self-discovering, assuming
I would say this is a lucky win.
Okay, but I'm gonna quote you yourself, and this is, we don't have time to go down there, so I'll just remind you that I listened to you. Actually, is you told me one time that if you hired someone to replace work that you could do at 60%, you should hire them. I was flabbergasted when you said that. And then your next comment to me was even better. And you're like, well, Mark, they can't stay at 60%. They have to, level up from there. But what I'm thinking about that is, like, if we don't learn anything from a failure, then we've really doubled the failure. But the whole point of this series and what you're about to do is, like, the failure that leads to success is really the fundamental thing that is why we keep succeeding and why we keep innovating. Going back to what we talked about at the beginning in the Contractor Coalition, and like how our content keeps changing. Because we keep learning from both successes and failures, and from our peers. I mean, I learn a lot observing you and our peers in the industry, right? I mean, that's kind of, we're in this chamber of, like, feedback loop is way quicker than it was multiple decades ago. Anyway, I'll step off my soapbox. Mike is yours.
To frame this, it's the beginning of COVID, and we get a call from a potential client. I'm sorry, an email from a potential client, wants to build a house. I jump at it. Absolutely, we're your guy. Whatever you need. What's the price? Let's go. They don't want to meet in person because of COVID. They have a high-profile job that they can't afford to risk getting sick. Blah, 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 blah. We Zoom, we FaceTime. I go on site. They're in their office. We walk the site. We walk through the project. We put together a budget. We iterate that budget, go back and forth. We meet with the architect, back, forth, husband and wife and us, like, we're meeting constantly, and sign a contract. We're ready to go. Great. They're on the same page. We've helped them value engineer some stuff. We've got the price to exactly where they want to. We get through permitting. We get the permit. We're setting up trades. We get a nice hefty deposit, where we are in motion. My site guy's driving to the job site. I'm stoked, chatting with him. Hey, site work's going to take this long. Awesome. I'll see you there in a couple hours. I'm going to head there myself. My phone rings. Husband calls. Hey, Nick, what's going on? I'm like, how much? Headed to the site with the trades today. We're getting started with site work. Okay. Can you give them a call and just tell them to hold off for a minute? I'm like, sure. What's going on? He goes, I am going to have to cancel the contract. I was like, okay, hold on one second. So I call my site guy. I'm like, hey, surprise, we're not doing that today. And he's like, and he was very upset. Thankfully, like, side story, I was able to divert him. Like, a friend of mine literally needed a site guy, like, ASAP. So got him over there. And so I call him back. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, to be honest, I know I was in those meetings. I don't know if I was ever listening. And I was like, what? He's like, well, this is way too much money, man. I'm like, interesting. I mean, we had multiple meetings at this, and, like, you signed the contract. I know, but I was really, like, leaning on my wife to, like, focus on that, and I just didn't really pay attention. And there's no way I can spend this much money. So I'm like at a loss for words, and so I'm freaking out. I'm like, this is 14 months of my schedule. My team's not that very, very big. Like, we were prepped and ready, and this is a huge hit to our schedule. So I say, okay, I understand. I will follow up with an email, and we will go from there. And that was it. And we never spoke again. And so I went back, and I'm reading through my contract at this time. I'm like, how do we cancel this? Like, what do I do with the deposit? There's nothing in the contract that states, like, what I do with the deposit. So I'm asking my attorney, I'm like, how do I handle this? And he's like, you don't have anything in here that protects it. And so he's like, you're kind like, you kind of have to give it back. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. And so I sat down and I basically did all the math out of how much we've had into the project plus our potential profit. And I don't remember how I calculated it, but basically like my lost profit for like a certain amount of runway where I know I could basically like backfill. And it was a lot of money. Like it was a 6-figure number. And I just wrote the remaining balance with like basically an explanation of that, and just sent them the check back. And that was it. No call, no email, no follow up, just like put it in the bank, and like we just moved on.
Wow.
And so my point is like, that was a terrible situation. I learned a lot. I fixed the contract since. Like we've had people cancel contracts, and it's a lot of money that they are putting on the line if they cancel for convenience, especially at the last minute. But I got lucky in the sense that they didn't fight for it, because on one hand, like they knew they owed me that money, and on the other hand, it's like contractually they owed me nothing.
I mean, it's such a gray area. It's funny. There's also what you can do legally. Just because you can do something legally doesn't mean you should do it legally, right? I mean, there are times where your contractor's right, but you're kind of like, especially I try to make it a habit of not fighting with millionaire and billionaires because they have a lot more money than I do. And, I don't know if you've ever been faced with, their guns are a lot bigger. You're in a Zodiac and they're in the USS Boston. And you're like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to win this battle. That's the next podcast. Talk about that one. Well, I want to respect your time. I appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to see you in a couple of weeks. If anyone's listening, wants to head to Denver, go to contractorcoalitionsummit.com. All the details are there. We're also heading to Minneapolis for a one-day event in September, and then in Charlotte, North Carolina, early November. So,
yeah.
Lots of time. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
See you in a couple of weeks.
All right. I'll see you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor. Share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.